Our young readers in London and other large towns have probably never seen a pair of snuffers, much less the flint and steel, with which a light had to be painfully obtained by the help of a tinderbox and a brimstone match. What a job on a cold raw morning to strike and strike and see the sparks die out because the tinder was damp. We are indeed living in an age of light when we compare our incandescent gas burners and electric lights with the rushlights of our childhood. And yet the change is not all one way. For if we have more light, we have also more fog and smoke, at least in London. Our keeping room was a very nice, large, comfortable dining room, and it had a large store closet at one end. You should have seen the best china. It only came out on state occasions, but it was very marvellous in the child's eyes. A quaint old winding stair led to the upper chambers. The last time I occupied the best bedroom, the floor appeared anxious to go out of the window. At least, it inclined that way. There seemed to be a chirping of birds very near my pillow in the morning, and I discovered that swallows had built outside the plaster, and sparrows had found a hole which admitted them inside of it, that there they might lay their young. It is not always that one can lie in bed and study ornithology. I confess that I liked all this rural life, and the old chintz bed furniture, and the paper round the looking-glass, cut in the form of horse-chestnut leaves and dahlias, and the tottery old mansion, all together. The boy among the books. I am afraid I am amusing myself rather than my reader, and so I will not weary him with more than this one bit more of rigmarole just now. But there was one place upstairs which I cannot omit, even at the risk of being wearisome. Opening out of one of the bedrooms, there was a little chamber, of which the window had been blocked up through that wretched window duty. When the original founder of Stambourne Meeting quitted the Church of England to form a separate congregation, he would seem to have been in possession of a fair estate, and the house was quite a noble one for those times. Before the light excluding tax had come into operation, that little room was the minister's study and closet for prayer, and a very nice cosy room too. In my time it was a dark den, but it contained books, and this made it a gold mine to me. Therein was fulfilled the promise, I will give thee the treasures of darkness. Some of these were enormous folios, such as a boy could hardly lift. Here I first struck up acquaintance with the martyrs, and specially with old Bonner, who burned them. Next, with Bunyan and his pilgrim, and further on, with the great masters of scriptural theology, with whom no moderns are worthy to be named in the same day. Even the old editions of their work, with their margins and old-fashioned notes, are precious to me. It is easy to tell a real Puritan book, even by its shape and by the appearance of the type. I confess that I harbour a prejudice against nearly all new editions, and cultivate a preference for the originals, even though they wander about in sheepskins and goatskins, or are shut up in the hardest of boards. It made my eyes water a short time ago to see a number of these old books in the new manse. I wonder whether some other boy will love them, and live to revive that grand old divinity which will yet be to England her balm and benison. Out of that darkened room I fetched those old authors when I was yet a youth, and never was I happier than when in their company. Out of the present contempt into which Puritanism has fallen, many brave hearts and true will fetch it, by the help of God, ere many years have passed. Those who have daubed up the windows will yet be surprised to see heaven's light beaming on the old truth, and then breaking forth from it to their own confusion. The following incident in Mr. Spurgeon's childhood days is here given as it was related by his Aunt Anne on the occasion when he visited Stambourne in the summer of 1887. One of the members of the church at Stambourne, named Rhodes, was in the habit of frequenting the public house to have his drop of beer and smoke his pipe, greatly to the grief of his godly pastor, who often heaved a sigh at the thought of his unhappy member's inconsistent conduct. Little Charles had doubtless noticed his grandfather's grief on this account, and laid it to his heart. One day he suddenly exclaimed in the hearing of the good old gentleman, "I'll kill old Rhodes, that I will." "Hush, hush, my dear," said the good pastor. "You mustn't talk so. It's very wrong, you know, and you'll get taken up by the police if you do anything wrong." "I shall not do anything bad, but I'll kill him, though, that I will." Well, the good grandfather was puzzled, but yet perfectly sure that the child would not do anything which he knew to be wrong, so he let it pass, with some half-mental remark about that strange child. Shortly after, however, the above conversation was brought to his mind by the child coming in and saying, "I've killed old Rhodes. He'll never grieve my dear grandpa any more." "My dear child," said the good man, "what have you done? Where have you been?" "I haven't been doing any harm, grandpa," said the child. "I've been about the Lord's work, that's all." Nothing more could be elicited from the little Charles, but before long the mystery was cleared up. Old Rhodes called to see his pastor, and with downcast looks and evident sorrow of heart, narrated the story of how he had been killed, somewhat in this fashion. "I'm very sorry indeed, my dear pastor, to have caused you such grief and trouble. It was very wrong, I know, but I always loved you, and wouldn't have done it if I'd only thought." Encouraged by the good pastor's kindly words, he went on with his story. "I was sitting in the public, just having my pipe and mug of beer, when that child comes in. To think an old man like me should be took to task and reproved by a bit of a child like that. Well, he points at me with his finger, just so, and says, 'What doest thou here, Elijah, sitting with the ungodly, and you a member of a church, and breaking your pastor's heart? I'm ashamed of you.' I wouldn't break my pastor's heart, I'm sure." And then he walks away. Well, I did feel angry, but I knew it was all true, and I was guilty. So I put down my pipe and did not touch my beer, but hurried away to a lonely spot, and cast myself down before the Lord, confessing my sin and begging for forgiveness.